Chapter 5. Fear is a strange thing. Most people imagine it arrives all at once, like a lightning strike, like a car crash, like the moment everything falls apart. But for Victor Lang, fear arrived slowly, quietly, one uncomfortable realization at a time. The week after Ethan's speech at the regional summit, Victor found himself hearing the same name everywhere, at restaurants, at business meetings, at charity events, at the golf course. People weren't talking about Ethan Harper's accident anymore. They weren't talking about the bankruptcy. They weren't talking about his past. For the first time, they were talking about his ideas. And that bothered Victor more than he wanted to admit, because ideas are dangerous, especially when they're working. Within a year, Ethan's community-based furniture network had expanded into 3 neighboring counties. Former factory workers had jobs again. Small workshops reopened. Young apprentices were learning trades that had nearly disappeared. Families who once couldn't afford quality furniture now had options. What started as a tiny project in a rented garage had become something much larger, and somehow, the man everyone dismissed was standing at the center of it. The irony wasn't lost on Rivet or Daniel. If anyone struggled with that realization, it was Ethan's older brother. Not because he was jealous, because he was ashamed. The guilt had been building for months. Every success Ethan achieved forced Daniel to revisit old memories, conversations, arguments, assumptions, moments he wished he could take back. One evening he finally showed up at Ethan's house unannounced. The same small rental home, the same porch, the same railroad tracks humming in the distance. Some things hadn't changed. Daniel stood there, awkwardly holding 2 cups of coffee. Like a teenager preparing for a difficult conversation, Ethan opened the door. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel held out one of the cups. Thought we could talk. That conversation lasted nearly 4 hours. Not because they argued. Because they were finally honest. For the first time in years, Daniel admitted something he'd never said aloud. I thought I knew who you were. Ethan smiled slightly. So did everybody else. Daniel looked down. No, the difference is I should have known better. That sentence hit harder than any apology. Because it was true. Strangers judging you is painful. Family doing it cuts deeper. Long after midnight, the brothers sat quietly on the porch. No dramatic speeches, no emotional movie moment, just 2 grown men finally understanding each other. Sometimes healing looks a lot less dramatic than people expect. Meanwhile, Victor's situation continued getting worse. Not publicly, not yet, but privately. The pressure was building. The problem wasn't Ethan. The problem was what Ethan represented. Transparency, local partnerships, community trust. Victor had spent years cultivating an image of generosity, leadership, integrity. The problem with building an image is that eventually reality has to support it. And Victor's reality wasn't nearly as clean as people believed. The first investigation started with a journalist, not a major newspaper, not a television network, just a local reporter named Sarah Bennett. Years earlier, Sarah had attended Founders Day and witnessed Victor publicly humiliate Ethan. At the time, she didn't think much about it. But something about Victor's behavior had stayed with her. Successful people usually don't waste energy punching down. In her experience, people who do that are often hiding something. So she started digging. At first she found nothing. Then she found a little. Then she found a lot. Questionable contracts, supplier agreements, missing disclosures. Nothing dramatic on its own. But together, a very different picture emerged. Within months, state regulators became involved, then auditors, then attorneys. The story spread quickly. The same town that once celebrated Victor now watched him answer difficult questions. The same community that once laughed at Ethan now watched the two men's reputations move in opposite directions, and yet something unexpected happened. Ethan refused to participate. Every reporter wanted a comment. Every interviewer wanted a reaction. Every headline practically wrote itself. Rich businessman falls as former failure rises. The public loved stories like that. But Ethan never gave them what they wanted. Whenever someone asked about Victor, he redirected the conversation back to workers, back to customers, back to rebuilding communities. At first, people found that frustrating. Then they began respecting it. Because revenge would have been easy. Bitterness would have been easy. Ethan chose something harder, moving forward. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after Founders Day, Maya found herself standing inside a newly renovated manufacturing center. The building had once been abandoned. Broken windows, graffiti, empty floors. Now it buzzed with life. Machines running. Employees working. Young apprentices learning from experienced craftsmen. The transformation felt impossible. As she walked through the facility, several employees greeted her by name. Something that would have seemed ridiculous years earlier. Then she noticed a plaque mounted near the entrance. At first she thought it honored donors or investors. Instead, it carried a simple inscription, built by people who refused to be defined by their worst day. Maya stared at it for a long time. Then she noticed something else, her own name, alongside dozens of others, volunteers, workers, community members, people who had helped from the beginning. When Ethan walked over, she looked genuinely confused. "You put my name on this?" Ethan laughed. "You thought you were getting out of this?" She shook her head. "I'm serious. So am I." For a moment his expression softened. "If you hadn't spoken up that day, I don't know if I'd still be here." Maya immediately disagreed. "You would have figured it out." "Maybe." He shrugged. "Or maybe sometimes people need one person to believe in them before they can believe in themselves." Maya looked away for a second. It was strange hearing that. For years she had believed she was the one learning from Ethan. Learning resilience, learning patience, learning how to keep moving forward when life stopped making sense. Yet somehow, he was thanking her. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. Some relationships aren't built through dramatic moments. They're built through hundreds of ordinary ones. Cheap coffee, long conversations, quiet evenings, showing up when nobody else does. Several months later, Riverton celebrated its annual Founders Day again. Only this time things felt different. The streets were familiar. The food trucks were back. The music played. Children ran through the crowd. The atmosphere had changed. People had changed. Near the center of the event stood the largest booth in the festival. Not because it was expensive, because it was crowded. Families, workers, business owners, students, everyone wanted to see what Ethan's organization was doing next. At one point, a young man approached him. Maybe 19 years old, nervous, unsure of himself. The kid admitted he'd made a lot of mistakes. Dropped out of school, made bad decisions, burned bridges. Now nobody believed in him. He asked Ethan a question many people had secretly wondered over the years. "How do you get people to see you differently?" Ethan smiled. The answer came immediately, not because he had prepared it, because he had lived it. "You don't." The young man looked confused. Ethan continued. "You Stop spending your life trying to control other people's opinions. The crowd nearby grew quiet, listening. You focus on becoming the person you want to be. Eventually some people notice, some won't. That's okay. The young man nodded, slowly, still processing. Then Ethan added one final thought. Same thought people would remember years later. Long after the headlines disappeared. Long after the business awards gathered dust. Long after the town moved on. Your value doesn't come from the people who underestimated you. It comes from what you choose to do after they do. The young man thanked him and walked away. As the crowd shifted around them, Maya stepped closer. You know, she said with a smile. That's pretty good advice. Ethan laughed. I was hoping it sounded wiser than I actually am. Maya shook her head. No, I think you finally believe it. For a moment neither spoke. The sounds of the festival faded into the background. Then Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, not as the person who stood beside him through the hardest years of his life, not as the friend who never walked away, but as the person he wanted standing beside him in whatever came next. Dinner after this? He asked. Maya smiled. Are you finally asking me on an actual date? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck and laughed. Took me long enough. A little. So is that a yes? Maya pretended to think about it, then nodded. Yeah, Ethan. It's a yes. And somehow, after everything they had survived, that simple answer felt bigger than any business deal either of them had ever seen. The festival continued. The crowd moved. The music played. Life went on. As the sun settled behind the rooftops of Riverton, Maya looked around at everything that had changed. The jobs, the workshops, the families, the people who had been given a second chance. Then she looked at Ethan. Years earlier, most of the town had only seen what they wanted to see. A spoiled rich kid, a failure, a man destined to waste his life. They were wrong, not because Ethan became successful. Success wasn't the lesson. The lesson was that a person's value cannot be measured by their worst mistake, their hardest season, or the rumors others choose to believe. Real character reveals itself when everything else is stripped away. When the applause disappears, when the money is gone, when nobody is watching. Ethan lost nearly everything, but in the process, he discovered who he truly was, and along the way, he found something else he never expected. A community that believed in him, a future worth building, and a woman who saw his worth long before the rest of the world did. Maybe that's why people still tell his story, not because he proved everyone wrong, but because he proved what becomes possible when courage is stronger than humiliation, when purpose is stronger than bitterness, and when one person chooses to keep standing after every reason to quit. In the end, that lesson turned out to be worth far more than any fortune he could have inherited. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel,